Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore. Time for another whiskey tasting. And today headed to the state of Colorado and Stranahan's Diamond Peak, which is a name that you may or may not be familiar with. Diamond Peak is a whiskey that's been around in the past, and now it is coming back as an annual thing, kind of like Snowflake, except unlike Snowflake, this one you should be able to find in your stores or be able to order. It's still going to be in limited runs, but it should be more readily available. This particular batch, number 4, is only 5,000 bottles, and this is number 2. So honored to have bottle number 2 right here. This is a Colorado Single Malt Whiskey, 2022 Bushmills Single Malt Cask. And the way that this whiskey is made is that they basically take a 100% malt whiskey, distill it, and then they put it for 2 to 7 years. Yes, you heard right, 2 to 7 years. That's quite a wide gap. And then that is an American oak charred barrel, and then it's moved over to a Bushmills single malt barrel for another up to 4 years. And when I first got this, I was marveling at the color, because that is definitely a Bourbon-Esque color. So my guess is that it's spending, the majority of this juice is probably spending more in the upper age up to the 7 years rather than being in the younger years. So we're going to get a chance to hear about and me taste a whiskey that has been long aged in Colorado in 2 different types of barrels. Because if you think about it, there's some whiskey in here that we're talking 11 years. I mean, and that's what's really cool is that Stranahans, when I was there, I saw some of the Bushmills barrels that they were using and got a chance to do a little mini cask strength tasting while there, but also they had a 10-year. And American single malt is still new enough that there really haven't been many experiments pushing to 10 years on an American single malt. So wondering, how is that going to do in a American oak freshly charred cask versus the way they do it in Scotland, where they take a used barrel and they put it in there. So that's why you get so much of a lighter color on your Scotch whiskeys versus what you're seeing here, which is, like I say, it's a very Bourbon-esque kind of a color. So I also had to go back and retaste some of my Bushmills 10-year single malt, just to get in my mind what flavor notes I would pull out of that. And that whiskey gives me a lot of pear and tropical fruit. And so I did some pre-tasting on this, and I can tell you, I did not taste tropical fruit. I'm going to look for it this time and see if I can pull it in. But the first time that I tasted this, I wasn't getting a whole lot of tropical fruit, if any, at all. So this will be an interesting one to taste and to nose. And immediately on the nose, it's an American single malt. So you're not going to be looking necessarily for your caramels and vanillas and the rye spice and all that sort of stuff. No, this is going to be going probably more into the fruits. But the first thing I notice on the nose is leather. So this has a very leather kind of a smell, which I associate with older whiskeys. This is 45% alcohol by volume, so 90 proof. There's also cinnamon in here. I'm getting like a baking cinnamon that comes in. It's very earthy kind of a nose to it, and the grain comes through, not really giving me kind of a citrusy punch like I sometimes will get out of grain. There's a lot of other stuff going on, and that leather note really kind of takes over the scene here. Maybe a little hazelnut. What's interesting is that along with that leather note that I usually point to when I think of older whiskeys, leather maybe coming from the oak, kind of a musty warehouse smell, that kind of thing. There's also a hint of sawdust in here. So it's kind of like new meets old, but I'm not getting any tropical fruit, not on the nose at this particular moment. Cheers. Toffee, cherry. Get a cherry note in there. It's really interesting. Pepper hits. It's not overly strong, but definitely a nice warming pepper on the palate. And then it goes to this, I'm getting like a sweet citrus flavor, like an orange or a tangerine kind of a note. It's probably as close as I'm getting to tropical fruit on this. I get maple. I get a little maple in there, and I get a tea note. But because of the sweetness around it and like a little toffee that comes in as well, it's almost like an iced tea note that comes in. But the thing that shocks me the most is that along with a tobacco kind of note, maybe tobacco / leather note, there is there's like a plum note. It's almost like this may have spent a few minutes in an Oloroso sherry barrel, but it hasn't. And maybe I'm just getting so used to drinking single malt that has Oloroso sherry in it that I'm just having a sympathetic tasting note that's coming through. I'm not sure, but that is really interesting because it's like a plum kind of a taste that I'm pulling out of that. And that's really unexpected when you read the label. And I guess that's why sometimes you should just not read the label and go in and taste it first, pull out all your notes, and then go back and see what it is that you're nosing and tasting. I'm going to see if I pulled that plum out on the nose, but actually now I'm getting more grain out of it than I was getting before. I have to say this, it's really interesting about Colorado whiskey because I was thinking about it after I like to have a theme for each of these episodes. And I thought, well, something that'd be interesting to talk about is what state in this country has the best whiskey. In other words, which one really should be known for its whiskey. And we can do this in one of two ways. We can do it by volume or we could do it by impact. And so I've been to Tennessee, I've been to 40 plus distilleries. I can tell you that there are some of those distilleries that are amongst my favorite distilleries. I've been to Kentucky, they got over 40 distilleries in Kentucky. I can tell you there are some of those distilleries that are some of my favorites, but we're not looking at something over 50% of those distilleries are in my upper echelon when we're talking about those two states. Go out to Texas, I have not had enough Texas whiskey, so it's hard to judge that, but I can say that of the Texas distilleries that I've been to, two of them are absolute favorites. Another one I hold a lot of promise for, and I've heard great things of some other distilleries there, but I haven't been to enough of them. But when I think of Colorado, I have been to 3 distilleries. I've had whiskey from 4, and I honestly think that those distilleries make some of the best whiskey in the country. And I haven't even been to Leopold Brothers, which everybody tells me I need to go there. And I'm like, it's a mind blower. So from an impact standpoint, in terms of the distilleries that I've been to in Colorado, I personally have to say that I think Colorado is my favorite state for whiskey because it's just, you can go to Colorado 291 and go to Laws and have their ryes, and they taste completely different. And then you can go to Talnua and you can have your Irish pot still whiskey with its very nice grape nuts grain meets pepper. And then you can go to Stranahan's and you can get all of these really interesting creations that Owen is coming up with that are, with his love and interest in Scotch and seeing what he is bringing to Stranahan's, it's fascinating. And so, for those that missed out on Snowflake, this might be a nice substitute for that. And it's kind of nice that they are doing a larger release of something that you don't have to hang out at the distillery to get once a year, one day a year. This will be available a little bit more widely. It's a very interesting whiskey. It reminds me, not necessarily in flavor notes or in nosing, but more in complexity to the Craigellachties and the Glengarrys that I really love in Scotland, because they're whiskeys that you can sit with, and the longer you sit with them, the more you go, ooh, I'm getting kind of a mint out of that. And I am getting just a hint of a mint, and that iced tea is still kind of lingering on at the finish, and then I'm like, plum, and they're all working together. I think the only drawback to this whiskey for me probably is that leather note at the beginning, because I'm not a huge fan of that leather note, but it's just on the nose. Once you get into the whiskey, that sort of slides into the background on this whiskey. So, no, I think this is a very good whiskey, and I love the complexity of it. And again, looking forward to seeing more of what comes out of Stranahan's, because this is a very nice whiskey and one to explore. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you would like to, you can give me a like if you found value in it, and leave some comments below. What is your favorite state for whiskey? What state would be your favorite state in terms of impact, and then what state would be your favorite in terms of, you probably have more distilleries that you like in that state than any other state. Be interesting to know. I appreciate you watching, and until next time, cheers and Slàinte mhath. Nice berries. Something else coming in. Peppery grain.